Happy Thursday. Hope you guys are doing well. I have some, I believe, some powerful truth to share with you today on the subject of mind renovation. I have continued to reiterate these same truths with all of these live audios. There is a particular aspect of this Romans chapter 12 truth that I have not shared with you, that I feel like now's the time for me to share it with you. I have shared it with other people when I was pastoring. I taught this, and I have shared this truth with people one-on-one. So some of you who listen to this will recognize it, but there are a whole lot of you who have not heard this, and I don't know. There may be other people who teach this. I haven't personally heard them, but it's something that as I have studied this over the years, the Spirit of God just showed this to me, and it really had a profound impact on my life, and it helps to kind of create the right picture, the right internal picture of what's going on as you go through this mind renovation process. So Romans chapter 12, Paul says, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." And I've explained to you that the word renewing in the Greek means to renovate. What I want to bring out, the new thing that I want to bring out for you today is concerning the word transformed. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. If you look up the word transformed in the Greek, which is the language, the original language that the New Testament was written in, you will find the word transfigure. Transfigure. The word transfigure, if you are a Christian, if you've been a Christian for very long at all, it should immediately bring to mind the accounting in the Gospels of Jesus on what has been labeled the Mount of Transfiguration, the moment when Jesus is transfigured in the eyes of witnessed by Peter, James, and John. And in that story, Moses and Elijah are standing there with him on this mountain, and he is talking to them, and they're ministering to him. And this transfiguration, in this moment of transfiguration, Jesus is glowing, and he looks like... I'm sorry, I forgot to put my phone in Do Not Disturb, and I just got a phone call. Give me just a second. Let me do that. Okay. So Jesus is this man Jesus who they have been walking with. I don't know how long they would have been walking with him at this point, but for some extended period of time, they have been walking with Jesus. And every day that they're living with him, Jesus just looks like a man. Jesus was 100% man. As concerns his flesh, he was 100% man. And so this Jesus that they're living with, the Jesus they're encountering, is a man just like them. He had body odor. He had to go to the bathroom. His hair would get oily. He had morning breath. He was man. We don't think about Jesus in those terms, but that's the Jesus that the disciples lived with. Their five senses were daily influenced by Jesus in his humanity. Now, there's an understanding, and he's sharing with them who he really is, that, I am the son, I'm the Son of God. But what their five senses are telling them is, you're just a man like me. And so, apart from the fact that he's doing miracles, but what they saw with their physical eyes told them that Jesus was a man just like them. But then there's this moment that happens where Peter, James, and John have the opportunity to see Jesus in his deity, where he's glowing and he looks like the Son of God. For the first time, they see him with their physical eyes looking like the Son of God. And then they come down from the mountain and he's back to looking like a man again. He looks like a man. So when I found, as I looked up this word transfigured, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, and when I looked up the word transformed and I saw the word transfigured, the Spirit of God just opened all that up for me, and I went to that story in my mind, and this is the way he explained it to me, that though there was this moment when the deity of Christ, what was true of him in his spirit was that he was 100% God, that there was this moment when that became glaringly obvious on the outside. Prior to that and after that, it wasn't obvious on the outside. He just looked like a man. But it didn't change the fact that what they saw in that moment was always true. It's not that it wasn't true and then it became true and then it went back to not being true. What they saw in that brief moment is what was always true about him in his spirit. It's just that it was cloaked in his flesh. That glowing white radiance of his deity was cloaked in his flesh most of the time, except for that one brief instance. And so what's true? So here's the truth. You can take the word transfigured. I keep saying transfigured. You can take the word transformed out of that verse in Romans 12, and you can plug in the word transfigured. So instead of the Apostle Paul saying, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, you can plug in the word transfigured so that it would read, be ye transfigured by the renewing of your mind. And so here's the truth in that, is that in the same way that it was always true of the man Jesus, that in his spirit he was 100% God, and he was that glowing, radiant deity. It's also true of us all the time in our born-again spirit that we look just like Jesus, that we are righteous and holy and sanctified and healed and have the mind of Christ and have authority and have power. As concerns your born-again spirit, you are perfectly sanctified. You are perfectly righteous. You look just like Jesus. The problem is that it's cloaked in your flesh. And so every believer is in the process of undergoing our own transfiguration. And the reason why it's important to understand that is that in the same way that was always true of Jesus, it wasn't that moment of transfiguration he became something that he wasn't already. It's just that it became obvious on the outside. It's also true of us that we are not trying to become something that we're not. It's that this is who we are. This is who I am. This is who you are. You are the righteousness of God. You are healthy. You do have the mind of Christ. You do have power. You do have authority. You do have union with Christ. Christ is your identity. And that's true in your born-again spirit. So the goal of the Christian life is to undergo a personal transfiguration so that what's always been true of you on the inside, from the moment you become joined to the Lord in faith, when you put faith in what Jesus did on the cross, and you were born again, from that very moment, these things have always been true of you. And the goal is for that to become increasingly more obvious on the outside, a personal transfiguration, so that what's true in your spirit becomes obvious on the outside. So that rather than it being cloaked in your flesh hiding your real identity, that your flesh gives way. Your flesh makes room and puts on display for all to see who you really are. That you, that's a Jesus person. That look, they have power, they have authority, they walk in love. They're radiant. They have joy when it doesn't make sense. They have peace when it doesn't make sense. They have the mind of Christ. They make wise choices. They don't get sick when other people get sick. When the flu goes around and cold season comes around, they don't succumb to that. They walk in divine health. All of that is true. In your born-again spirit, you have now possession of that. It's just that needs to become more obvious on the outside. You need a transfiguration. But it's a major difference. It's a major difference in thinking. To go from thinking that you're trying to become something you're not, to understanding that what's happening in this process is that what is already true of you is just becoming increasingly more obvious and manifested on the outside. Just like what happened with Jesus when he was transfigured. He was always God in the flesh. It's just that it wasn't always obvious. So as we go through, as we renovate our minds, we are facilitating our personal transfiguration, so that what is true of you now, so that your real identity can come out of hiding. So that your real identity can come out of hiding, so that Superman can quit looking like Clark Kent. So you can just be Superman all the time. Aren't you tired of being Clark Kent? Don't you want to be Superman all the time? On the inside, you are very much Superman. But Clark Kent needs to get out of the way. And that's what this mind renovation process is doing. Okay? I pray that helps you. Man, I really pray that you grabbed a hold of that. So, let's dive into it. Let's make some confessions. Let your ears hear your mouth speaking in agreement with what God says is true about you, that you have union with Christ, and that your real identity looks just like Jesus. Okay? So I'm going to make these statements. I encourage you, I implore you, darlings of God, to repeat these things after me. Because I've done a long teaching, I'm going to keep this last part a little shorter, okay? All right, let's get started. Papa, I thank you today for my union with Christ. He and I are one. One. And that means that there is nothing that separates he and I. There's nothing I go through that separates me from him. Nothing the enemy throws my way can separate me from him. Nothing I do can separate me from him. We are one, and he is now my identity. I have his mind. Contained in his mind are his purposes, his ideas, his wisdom, his thoughts, his desires, his intelligence. And I have now full possession of all of that. I'm not trying to get the mind of Christ. I have it now. And so I choose today to not lean to my own understanding, but to lean into his mind, to draw from his mind that is mine. And as I lean into his mind, my path is made straight. I experience pleasing outcomes, desirable results. Obstacles become no obstacle for me. I am able to leap over a wall and run through a troop because nothing is impossible for him, so nothing is impossible for me. Lord Jesus, thank you for your obedience to the Father. Thank you for always doing those things that pleased him when you lived upon the earth. Thank you for fulfilling the law completely in my place. Thank you for bearing my punishment in your body. Thank you for wearing my shame, for taking my blame, for dying my death. I choose today to identify with your perfect track record of obedience. Because of what you did, because of your finished work, not only have my sins been completely washed away, past, present, and future, even the ones I haven't thought of yet, even the ones I'm not conscious of. Not only have my sins been completely put away forever, but as far back in my history as I can go, my history has been rewritten because I have been credited with your perfect track record of obedience. So as far back as you can go in my history, it looks like I always did those things that pleased you. And as far into my future as I can go, it looks like I always do those things that please you. Thank you for the gift of righteousness. Your righteousness, your perfect righteousness that is now my own. I have confidence towards you, not because of anything that I do right, but because of that gift of righteousness. I reject lies of the enemy, lies of religion that would suggest to me that I have reason to hesitate or pull back or question whether or not I deserve to have your promises fulfilled in my life. I reject those lies because the truth is that I deserve it as much as Jesus does. Because his righteousness is now my own. I am as deserving of favor and blessing as Jesus is. Because his righteousness is now my own. And that is true of me every single day of my life. Every moment of every day. And I thank you for it. I give you praise and glory and honor for it. And I choose again today to submit myself to this righteousness of faith. I reject self-righteousness. Self-righteousness stinks in your nostrils. Self-righteousness is pukish, and I'll have none of it. Flesh, I deny you bragging rights in my right standing with God. Flesh, you don't get to pat yourself on the back and feel awfully self-satisfied because you've done good this week. Because you've prayed more this week than last week. Because you gave that money in the offering when you really didn't want to. Because you read an extra chapter in the Bible this morning. Because you actually got up when your alarm went off and spent time with God. Because you witnessed to somebody yesterday. You don't get to pat yourself on the back and feel self-satisfied with that. I choose to put all of my confidence, to only have confidence towards God on the basis of Christ and him crucified. I hold up nothing other than Christ and him crucified. I present before you, Papa, Christ and him crucified. His cross was and is my cross. His righteousness is my righteousness. I have no righteousness apart from his. And I rest in that. Amen. Amen. I love you guys. Thank you for tuning in. This is something, a friend of mine posted something yesterday on Facebook that said, do something today that your future self will thank you for. Well, let me just tell you, darlings of God, there is very little that you could do today that your future self would thank you for more than taking the time to renew your mind to these spiritual truths. Your future self thanks you. Your future self will thank you for doing this. I will see you, or I will do this with you again tomorrow. Love you guys. And please consider sharing this and encouraging your friends and your family to make use of this tool. The Lord has asked me to do this, and it's because it's a really good tool. Some people just don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. And so this is an excellent tool to help with that. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.